Jai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to some devotees. All glories to some devotees. All glories to some devotees. All glories to Nanda. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are reading together Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 12, entitled Dhruva Maharaj Goes Back to Godhead. So it's up there? Is it up there? It's up there now, or just not coming? Just not coming. So let's do the word for word then. Yeah, 4, 12, 13. Shat Trim Shat Varsha Sahasram Shashata Shashasha Chiti Mandalam Mogai Punya Chayam Puravan Abogai Ashubha Chayam. There now? Okay, good. Shatrim Shad Varsha Sahasram Shasha Sachiti Mandalam Mogai Punya Chayam Koravan Abogar Ashubha Chayam Shatrimshan Varsha Sahasram Shashasa Chiti Mandalam Mogai Punya Chayam Kurvan Abhogar Ashubha Chayam Shatrimshad Varsha Sahasram Shasa Kiti Mandalam Mogai Punya Chayam Kurvan Abhogar Ashubha Chayan Ladies. Meaning Shat 36 Varsha years. Sahasram 1,000. Shashasa rule. Chiti Mandalam the earth planet. Bogai by enjoyment. Punya of reactions of pious activities. Shayam diminution. Purvan doing. Abhogai by austerities. Ashubha of inauspicious reactions. Sayam diminution. Translation. Dhruva Maharaj ruled over this planet for 36,000 years. He diminished the reactions of pious activities by enjoyment, and by practicing austerities, he diminished inauspicious reactions. Please repeat. Dhruva Maharaj ruled over this planet for 36,000 years. He diminished the reactions of pious activities by enjoyment, and by practicing austerities, he diminished inauspicious reactions. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. That Dhruva Maharaj ruled over the planet for 36,000 years means that he was present in Satya Yuga, because in the Satya Yuga, people used to live for 100,000 years. In the next Yuga, Treta, people used to live for 10,000 years. And in the next Yuga, Dwarpara, for 1,000 years. In the present age, the Kali Yuga, The maximum duration of life is 100 years. It's like if somebody lives like 102, their name's in the newspaper. It's a big thing. You know, there's some lady in China who's 102 years old. The whole world hears about her. With the change of the yugas, the duration of life and memory, the quality of kindness, and all other good qualities diminish. There are two kinds of activities, namely pious and impious. By executing pious activities, one can gain facilities for higher material enjoyment. But due to impious activities, one has to undergo severe distress. A devotee, however, is not interested in enjoyment or affected by distress. When he is prosperous, he knows, quote, I am diminishing the results of my pious activities. And when he's in distress, he knows, quote, I am diminishing the reactions of my impious activities. Devotee is not concerned with enjoyment or distress. He simply desires to execute devotional service. It is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam that devotional service should be apratihata, unchecked by material conditions of happiness or distress. Devotee undergoes processes of austerity, such as observing Ekadasi and similar other fasting days, and refraining from illicit sex life, intoxication, gambling, and meat eating. Thus, he becomes purified from the reactions of his past impious life. Because he engages in devotional service, which is the most pious activity, he enjoys life without separate endeavor. Om Gyanatamyandasha Janan Anjana Shalakaya Chakshu Om Militam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Nena Bhuttale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Didati Svapanantikam Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasi Gaur Bhaktivedanta Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. So thank you all for coming. It's nice to see so many devotees turned out on Saturday morning. Very appreciative to be able to be here again. I was here last night, and this is kind of like the base. From here you go to Ann Arbor, from here you go to East Lansing, from here you go all over the place. So Farmington Hills Ki Jai. Very special. I was noticing actually, I have to admit, I've kind of forgotten how the deities look. But everywhere I was going, people's homes, I was seeing this picture of these beautiful deities. I was saying, boy, these are really beautiful deities. Are these the deities from here? And of course, when you see them in person, you realize, oh yes, I need a big picture like that too at my house. So such beautiful deities and being worshipped so nicely. And like we saw last night, example of such a caring community here. Devotees are trying, and of course appreciating what we discussed last night, how to offer more appreciation for devotees and develop that kind of mood of seeing the good qualities in others. It's a very important part of our devotional practice. We're trying very hard to bring people to Krishna consciousness. We're going on Harinam regularly, we hope here. We're distributing books regularly, we hope here. We're doing so many things, nice prasadam feasts, inviting our friends and neighbors to come so they can take advantage of the community. And then once inside, we have to make sure we take care of them. That's also our responsibility too. So thank you for that. And at the same time, I'll mention that we should always know there's always room for improvement. This is one of the principles that we teach in the leadership, in ISKCON leadership and management course, that there's always room for improvement. I was thinking about, you may remember this film about the 50th anniversary of ISKCON that was held at Harvard University a few years ago. Big academic event, 3-day event. And in there, Shonaka Rishi Prabhu was the head of the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies. He tells this story how Tom Hopkins, who recently passed away, a good friend of our society, important scholar, how he said Tom one time came into Shonaka's office. He had an adjoining office, and he came in and he was telling him, Shonaka, Prabhupada talks about cleanliness is next to godliness. He was thinking this is some nice interfaith exchange they're having here. He's a professor from a different tradition and he's speaking about his appreciation. So he was explaining like that Prabhupada says cleanliness is next to godliness. And then he paused and he said, have you seen your kitchen? So we say cleanliness is next to godliness, but this outside scholar, not a devotee, I don't know, maybe he was vegetarian, we're so proud of our principles, but he was saying, have you seen your kitchen in the Aksha Center? So what good is your principle in a nice way? What good is your principle of cleanliness if you're not practicing cleanliness, right? Like sometimes they say words are cheap, right? We've all met people, like I live in Washington, it's a city full of people that are expert at cheap words. They say things, but they don't necessarily do things and follow through. So the same way we read in the Bhagavad Gita, just chanted, right? How of my respectful basis under my spiritual masters who open my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. That's a nice mantra, it's a nice thing to say. But what does that mean to have our eyes open? What are we seeing? What are we not seeing? There's some nice stories with Srila Prabhupada when he was walking with devotees and he said something like, whoever has eyes, Jesus said like this, whoever has eyes, let him see. Prabhupada was saying, you have eyes, do you see? And they all couldn't figure out what Prabhupada was talking about. And there was, I believe at this one occasion, there was just some water was dripping. So he was probably just standing there with all his big disciples. Do you have eyes? Can you see? And they're like, what? See what? We're supposed to see Krishna. What are we seeing? Is Prabhupada seeing Radha and Govinda dancing? See that. So I would just advise us all, there's always room for improvement. Yesterday, I just got a little frustrated. So I looked in the back of my car. I don't have any real scissors, but I had a knife and an X-Acto, and I went out and did the best I could. You can't even see the sign when you drive down the road. Anybody notice why you can't see the sign? There's bushes covering it. So whose job is that to make sure there's no bushes covering the sign? It's his job. It's Yugal's job. He's in charge of everything, right? Everything should be done by him, and we don't have to do anything, right? There's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. There's about 30 of us here. I'll go out and check, but I'd be willing to bet all 30 of us walked by the cabbage and the tomato and the other garbage right outside the door. Now I was walking in, I didn't have time to stop and pick up everything, but I picked up the dirty spoon, I picked up some dirty string. It had probably been there, judging by the string, for at least a week, maybe longer. And so we're rushing to see Krishna, but we're rushing to serve Krishna. But if we don't think that we're servants of Krishna, then, we walk by, we think, well, it's not my job. Or maybe we don't see. Prabhupada said we should see. The Shastra says our eyes should be opened by the torch of knowledge, right? So knowledge means seeing everything belongs to Krishna. And everything belongs to Krishna, everything is sacred. If everything's sacred, everything should be kept clean, isn't it? If it's sacred, it should be kept clean. Not that we think, I go home and I wash my dhoti, my sari very nicely. Maybe I iron my kurta, make myself look really good, or whatever. we should also, or we think Krishna's here, we'll worship the deities nicely, but Krishna's not outside his temple. We shouldn't think like that. The whole place is Krishna's temple. And we shouldn't think, I'm a pujari, I only worship the deities, I don't pick up the trash. Or I'm a Brahmana now, I don't pick up the trash. If you read Lilamrita, when Prabhupada came to New York City, it's specifically described there how sometimes the manager, the owner of the building, his name was Mr. Chuti. C-H-U-T-I, if I remember correctly. And Prabhupada had come from Vrindavan not so long ago. So he's used to, the high standards of what different classes of people do or don't do. But it specifically described that Prabhupada would help Mr. Chuti take out the garbage of the neighbors. Okay, now last thing I know, those neighbors weren't vegetarian. Those of you that are old enough, you remember that plastic bags inside trash cans is a new thing. Maybe 20, 30 years. 50 years ago, there were no plastic bags inside trash cans. Trash cans were disgusting. And to take out the trash was not a very nice thing. Definitely not a thing that a Paka Brahmana would do. Definitely not the thing that a founder of a spiritual movement would do. Definitely not the thing that an elderly, saintly person would do. But a pure devotee would do it. So Prabhupada was taking out the trash for Mr. Chuti's neighbors. Many reasons for that. We don't understand all the reasons. I would think in part because he was concerned to make sure Mr. Chuti appreciated devotees, because he didn't like the young devotees very much. He liked Prabhupada. He wasn't so sure about these young hippies that were hanging out in this building. But Prabhupada himself set that example. There's so many stories of Prabhupada. Maybe I said this before. When I first went to India, I wasn't initiated yet, and I was told we have special service for you for Srila Prabhupada. Personal service. Wow, what's that? He said every day after Mangalarti, you go to the top of the building. There was only one building that time. The Lotus building. Everything was there, the ashrams, temple, Prabhupada's rooms. And you hold your hand out after Mangalarti. As soon as the sun comes up, as soon as you can see your hand, that much light, you run. You don't walk. You run. The top floor to turn off on the extra lights, then the next floor, then you walk down, you run. That was my personal service for Srila Prabhupada. Because he recently chastised devotees because they were wasting energy. So we may think, what's a light, what's this, what's that? But Prabhupada sees as Krishna's energy, as Krishna's gift. So we may see, I have my car, I'm going to go inside, do the deity, which is not my job to pick up literally, there's, cabbage, lettuce, tomato, right outside the door, like 1-2 feet from the door. It's one thing, okay, we don't see the other side of the parking lot, which we should. We should all walk around the parking lot at least once in a while before we get in our car to see if there's how's Krishna's parking lot doing. But at least right outside the door, we all should see like that. So there's another story. Prabhupada was with in Vrindavan. There was a devotee. I think he's passed away. He's probably with Krishna now. He's a very eccentric devotee. And Prabhupada would come out for his morning walk, and he would be standing there reciting verses, Vedic verses. Shastric verses. So he came out, Prabhupada walked by one day. I think I have the right number of days. One day, Prabhupada walked by. Second day, walked by. Third day, Prabhupada stopped and said, why don't you do something practical? He chastised him for standing there reciting Gita or Bhagavatam, whatever. I'm sure he wasn't reading something that wasn't Vaishnava, but he told him, why don't you do something practical? So the next day came out, when Prabhupada came, he had a broom, he was sweeping. He waited till Prabhupada came, he was like sweeping. Prabhupada didn't say anything else. So he got the message, do something practical. So there's an example, he was thinking, I'm going to serve Prabhupada and glorify by chanting some mantras. Of course, we chant so many mantras, they're important. But Prabhupada is also saying, do something practical. So we should be very careful in our Krishna consciousness and not think that, like we talk about preaching and serving the deities, it's not a ritual cleanliness. It's not that we come in and we put water in our hands and we say some mantras. Now everything is clean. I was in one temple a few years ago, and the leader of the community lived in a little cottage next to the temple. And I was shocked. I saw them one day, they kind of opened the door and threw out some water, from the dishwasher, just threw it out right in front of the door. And these are really fuck-up Brahminical people, right? Best birth, and knew all the mantras. And they knew shlokas from books I never heard of. They were highly learned people. But when it came to the practicalities of living a clean life, as Prabhupada demonstrated by turning off the faucet, by turning off the light, by telling them to do something practical. I'll do one other story, and then we'll go back to Dhruva Maharaj. I just heard this one recently. I have to double check. It might have been New York, some temple, multi-story temple, and Prabhupada came and they were showing him the building, giving him kind of a tour of the building, and they cleaned everything very nicely. Sometimes Prabhupada would comment, or devotees with him would comment. Everywhere he went, there was a smell of fresh paint. Whatever country he went to, was a smell of fresh paint. Because before Prabhupada would come, the whole, it's like a big marathon to try to make the place very nice for Prabhupada. Everybody would look, what's not nice? What can we fix? What should we fix? Because Prabhupada would notice. Two stories. One story, Prabhupada went on the morning walk, and I think it was Jamuna, and some of the other senior ladies, they did a special attentive cleaning of Prabhupada's rooms. Prabhupada came back, he was kind of noticing. And then he sat down and he opened one box that was on his desk, and he wiped his finger on the inside, there was dust. He held up his finger and said, who's cleaned this room? Pointing out like that, Josh. So His other story, Prabhupada was, he was, again, I think New York, but some building, high school. So everything, everything was painted and cleaned and everything was very nice. And on the very top of the roof, there was one building, there's one little storage shed or something. And they put all the tools and everything, they cleaned everything so nice, they just threw that in there, get it out of the way, put a lock on it. Everything looked so great. So Prabhupada was walking around, this is nice, this, next floor, it looks very nice, next floor. Went to the roof, looked around, Prabhupada said, what is in there? He pointed right to the shed. He said, Prabhupada, we're just storing some things here, so get the key. So they got the key and they opened it up, and as they opened the door, things are falling out. Prabhupada showed his dissatisfaction. So why is he dissatisfied? Why is he was he just like micromanaging? Right? We all know micromanaging is something maybe we all tend to do sometimes. People micromanage us, it's not a nice thing. Was he micromanaging, or was he actually demonstrating to us what it means to have the vision of a lover of Krishna? Because if we actually love Krishna, especially at the temple, we'll see everything's in connection with Krishna. Not just that. Probably in one lecture, I have to go back and listen to it. He said something like, in a lot of temples, they have marble floor. Here you have this nice wood floor, or simulated wood floor, something, nice floor. Prabhu was saying that the deity of Krishna is marble, and the floor is marble. They're both Krishna. Now, not that we're Mayavadis, and we think that, it's all one energy and all that, but it's Krishna that is Krishna's energy. It's just like if you go to a friend's house and you tell them how much you like them and how much, they're so dear to you, and then you yell at their children, right? Would we do that? Because their children is intimately connected with their child, or if I come to your house, thank you very much, and I ask if I can use the restroom, and I go and then I mess the whole place up. I like you very much, thank you, but then I mess up your restroom. What kind of relationship is there? So the same way he was describing it, we shouldn't think, okay, the deity's here. Just like it's explained, the neophyte devotee, one of the symptoms of the neophyte devotee is they say Krishna's in the temple, but as soon as they walk outside, there's no Krishna. Of course, part of that is they think he's not watching, but we know he's watching, he's everywhere. But we should try to develop consciousness like that, and thinking that, okay, if I'm a servant of Krishna, it's not that I serve here and I don't serve there. I do this service, but I don't do that service. And of course, not that we drive ourselves crazy trying to see every little thing that somebody should do. In that sense, there's not enough time in the day. We should try to develop that consciousness of where, to say, to explain, a Brahmana is someone who every time they leave a room, it's cleaner, right? We go in some place a little bit cleaner. And if we think like that and we act like that, then we make things very, very nice in the community. So working very hard for inside cleanliness, but we should also be working very hard for our external cleanliness as well. So we have to be transcendental, and we also have to be practical. We want to preach, but one very important thing about preaching, giving others Christian consciousness, we have to try to see things the way others see. Honestly, if somebody comes to the temple and sees squished tomatoes and cabbage on the sidewalk, are they going to think this is a very nice place? We may think, oh, come inside, Krishna's so beautiful. They're not going to get past the outside. They're just not gonna. Some people, it's going to be a big turnoff. And it's not for us to judge and say, well, if they were sincere, they'd get past the tomato. We should think, make sure there's no tomatoes, right? We shouldn't think, well, if they were really pure, they would see the sign from the road, even if it's blocked by the trees. We should think, no, it's my job to help people feel welcome. Just like that one man last night, one devotee was mentioning about appreciation. How important thing to do is to make sure devotees feel welcome. That was such a nice comment, how he felt welcome. I asked him later, he was explaining, he went to some temple, I don't recall which one, but devotees made him feel very welcome. So for him, that was such a nice and inspiring reason to come to the temple. So we have to be very practical in that sense and try to make sure everyone feels welcome. And I remember whatever he told me, they did some little, I know what it was. He said he came to the temple, he didn't feel comfortable. He was feeling like, I'm just a sinful fool. He was obviously a pious person, but he's saying, I'm just a sinful fool. I shouldn't even be here. What right do I have to be at the temple? Maybe I should just leave. And he said, one Mataji came up and said, here's a mat, you can sit on this. That little tiny gesture of kindness. And he's standing here telling us publicly about how we have to be welcoming, because he remembered that. So we should always remember, maybe you may be having a rough day, maybe our body's giving so much trouble, and we know, sometimes the body's so much trouble. Economic problems, mental problems, emotional problems, intellectual problems, physical problems, business problems, house problems, car, we got a lot of problems. We have, in the communications course, there's a listening session. We tell everybody, think about a problem you can talk to everybody about for a few minutes. I always make a joke. I say, if you don't have any problems, talk to me. I've got extras. We all have so many problems. But we shouldn't forget that in the midst of that, even like a little, like you're really so kind. A big smile, no matter who you are, when you care from, where you come from. Big smile. So we shouldn't think, well, what I do is not so important. Who I am is not so important. But just the smallest gesture to really make a difference, in terms of the way we interact with people, the way we make sure the temple's really neat and clean. So we should think like that. Okay, Krishna, please open my eyes. What can I do to make our community even more welcoming? What can I do to make our temple even more clean and representing Krishna? Prabhupada says so many times we should live in the mode of goodness. Tomatoes are not. Well, they are, maybe in the mode of goodness if they're cooked nicely and offered to the Lord, but not outside. Okay, so just a few thoughts on that. And just end with that. We should remember we're following the science of bhakti, pure bhakti, and we're meant to apply ourselves wholeheartedly with everything. It's not a ritual. Krishna consciousness. I mean, there are some religious traditions, and they're wonderful. We pray for them where you accept whatever. You get baptized, or you take some vows, or even our tradition. Sometimes people think you get a spiritual name. No, you're done. What's the spiritual name? Vishnu Das, Radha Das, Krishna Das. So now it's official. We know who we are. I'm Krishna's servant. Now I begin. Right? Before then, I thought I was Raj Patel. I was the king of the Patels. Right? Or something else like that. I was, what's it? Right, Preeti, right? I'm the name of some flowers. Pushpa. I'm Pushpa. I'm like the flower. But no, you're Das. You're Das and Dasi. So it's important for us to remember. The last thing on this, I just made a note. I mean, it's right there in the Krishna book. In case it's not clear enough, there's the Brahmanas and the Brahmanas' wives. And the Brahmanas were so pakka. They knew all the mantras, all the rituals, all the sacrifices. They were so proud of their status. When Krishna himself came to them, right? Krishna sent the cowherd boys with the message, hey, Krishna's here, chance for some service. They were too proud. What, us? And the Brahmins' wives were like, what, Krishna, Balaram? They want anything and everything. Let's bring them whatever we got. So they understood. And later the Brahmins, they lamented, what good is all of our status and all that? So we should always think like that. It's a sign of humility that whatever needs to be done, I'll do it. And we should remember this example of Prabhupada can take out the trash for, non-veg neighbors. Who are we to think we can't pick up some around the temple and do the things that need to be done? And if we're too busy, that's okay. Then, sometimes we're so busy. Then give money to pay for somebody else to do it at least. Tell you, I want to give $1,000 a month so we can hire a janitor to come in and do things or whatever. Little things, even small things, even like these chair covers. When's the last time they were cleaned? Anybody remember? Anybody have a washing machine at home? When's the last time you washed your laundry? Probably within the last week, right? So why don't we wash this chair cover? And we can't, Yoga Kishore is busy. He's got like half the country, right? In his spare time, he's responsible for New York City. Right? He's only got, what, 14 million people? Something like that. So we can't expect him to do it. But a lot of you live here. So we should see things and we should do things, right? It's not like we have to go, you'll be sure, Prabhu, I just noticed there's tomato outside. Can I pick it up? Is that in my service list? Is it on my schedule? 10 minutes ago, I can go show you right now if you like. Yeah, it's still there. I was gonna pick it up, but I thought I'll leave it as a visual demonstration. Arts and crafts. But we have to see things like that. You know, and again, you may be busy, but you know, what's it take to like pick up something on the way in? Again, sometimes there's so much it's overwhelming. You know, maybe I don't have time to sit and talk to the person who's come here for the first time. I've got other services. I've got to rush home and take care of my kids. But I can just say, thank you so much for coming. It's really great to have you here. You know, and I'd sit and talk with you more, but I'm afraid of others. Just that little bit can make such a difference. Because again, this testimony last night, the voice says, some lady he didn't even know, offered him a mat, I don't know, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years later, he's telling us what a difference that made for him. So we should never think that whatever we do doesn't make a difference. That's Maya. That's illusion, trying to tell us you don't count. As we discussed last night, we all count. You count. You may be young, you may be little, but you count and you can make a difference. And every little thing we do can really make a difference. So let's take that up. Okay, so in this verse today, and I need to leave about 9:15 because Ravinda Swarup Prabhu, it says Vyasa Puja. And I wanted to say a few things, so I'll leave around 9:15. But a few thoughts in this verse. First, it's explained Dhruva Maharaj lived for 36,000 years. Prabhupada spends 6 or 8 or 10 lines on that. So just to reflect what Prabhupada said, it was a different yuga, and they lived for much longer times. So it's not so much a surprise. Even there's other literatures, I think like the Bible talks about some of the people like Moses or somebody lived like 600 years. I'm sure they just skip over that, like who believes that? But for us, it's like, oh yeah, he must have been the previous age. He lived to be 600 years, no problem, right? Because we understand that, the time span of the universe. And maybe the most important thing is we think in previous ages they had 10,000 years or 100,000 years, 1,000 years. We have 100 at most. And we have an example of Parikshit Maharaj, who was relatively young, but 7 days. And he had notice. So he got very serious because he realized, okay, I only have 7 days left. What do I do? We should think a little bit like that. Frankly, we don't know if we have 7 days. Each of us will be in a certain stage of life when we think we have longer, but we only have 7 days left. Maybe when you're 80, maybe when you're 40. You know, you read things and it's very sad to read, like there was this material world is such a difficult place. There's the man who, I think is the CEO or the founder or something of DoorDash. Do they have DoorDash here? You know, one of those delivery service companies. So just recently, like maybe 2 weeks ago, some young guy, 40-ish, he was with his parents. I think it's called Lake Tahoe, I think, big lake in Nevada, beautiful lake. And they were out in their boat, probably a pretty nice boat, he's a very wealthy man. And a big storm came up and capsized a whole bunch of boats. He's dead. His mom's dead. His dad's dead. They were just going out for riding the boat. They weren't, you know, jumping off mountains and taking a risk with their life. So you read these things all the time. So we don't know. I hope everybody here lives a full 100 years of Krishna conscious service, but we really don't know.
What happened to the boat?
It capsized.
Oh,
it flipped over and they drowned. And there was quite a few people, but they were the most famous. You know, I don't know, 10 or 15 boats flipped. Just some unexpected storm. They predicted it was going to be windy day, but they didn't predict it was going to be like that. Just some huge storm came up and blew the boat over. You know? So those things happen. I mean, I had a personal experience years and years ago. I was in Colorado, and I had some relatives who were like up in the mountains. Beautiful sunny day, so I borrowed somebody's car. It was a Brahmanshah, I didn't have a car. And I didn't think about the tires, I was just borrowing a car. And while I was in the mountains, there was a snowstorm. So when I drove home, there was about 5, 6 inches of snow on the ground. You all live in a cold climate. You don't drive in it. You don't have. So I'm driving, trying to get home, and there was no tread on the tires. And at one point, my car just like slid right off the side. It was like kind of like parallel. And there were like tractor trailers, and there was one coming, and I couldn't get up. I couldn't get up. The car wouldn't go. My Christmas grace, the car just slid off the road just in time because I couldn't get on. You know, I was kind of the little tiny slope. Just I was on the shoulder, but facing in to the road because I'd slid, and I was like trying to go up, and it had no traction. And some other Christian just slid it to the side. And I was thinking about that sometimes, like, I don't know, maybe that was my time to go, and by Prophet's grace, I'm still here. But it's just we all have times like that. And it should be a reminder to us we don't know how much time we have. So Dhruva Maharaj had a lot of time and he used it very carefully, but as described as devotees, we should really think we don't want to waste a moment because we don't know how much time we have. And then it's described, Prabhupada points out a lot of things in this purport. It's really beautiful purport. He explains how as this age worsens, Kali, all good qualities diminish. And I think we've seen this right in front of our eyes. I mean, in some sense, there's more vegetarians now. For a while, there was more interest in preserving the earth, but now that's kind of gone out of vogue. It's like, I mean, you read that they're like allowing dangerous chemicals that were outlawed for years, they're now being brought back because they make money. So it's like, well, are we making progress or we're not making progress? And according to our understanding, as the age advances, all qualities diminish. I mean, I remember when COVID was there, everybody had to slow down, kind of spend more time with your kids and your family and be at home. And a lot of people, whenever they fixed up their houses, couldn't go out. There was moose walking through towns that they hadn't seen moose in years. And I remember seeing some video. There were dolphins in the Venice canals again. It was like, wow, the nature's coming back. And then the big thought was, what's going to happen after COVID? Are people going to learn about how fragile this life is and about how every moment is a gift? And these days, you think like, what happened? Did anybody learn anything? If anything, people are driving more crazy and less sensitive on the roads. I mean, it's just my experience is people, when you just simple thing like driving on the road, there used to be some sense of courtesy. There's not very much of that left today. They're just practical things we see is how even the qualities. It's interesting too, especially considering our seminar last night. Prabhupada mentions how all good qualities diminish, and he specifically mentions kindness. He specifically mentions how kindness is diminishing. So I think that's a message for us. We should not let kindness diminish. It's the quality of devotees. And of course, we all, we're so conditioned by so many different things, but we should try. And at the end, he mentions how devotees refrain from, what term does he use? Well, he's talking about impious activities. And he specifically mentions illicit sex life, intoxication, gambling, and eating. And of course, those are the vows we take. And we should understand those vows are to avoid the grossest manifestation that violate the 4 pillars of religiosity, right? So what are those? Because we know what the 4 do nots are. What are the 4 do's? Truthfulness, cleanliness, mercifulness, austerity. Yeah. Sometimes I like to say austerity, like self-discipline. People today, they don't so much understand austerity, but they all understand self-discipline because everybody's got a kid or a neighbor who's got a kid who's taking kung fu class or karate. They all understand self-discipline. Teach the little kids, you got to discipline yourself. That's austerity. It means you accept something for a higher purpose. You say no to something else. So it's important that we try to remember and practice these vows and the pillars that we're trying to pull, that we practice truthfulness. I was on a conference call yesterday with Mayapur, which is our international headquarters. It's also in a place that's kind of out of the way. It's really in a village in West Bengal. It's not in Mumbai. And they were talking about how we need to make sure, they're talking to all the leadership there, we really have to be very careful how we practice behave in a mode of goodness. This is what devotees are doing. And I just added one comment, which is sometimes in some places, we see that personal loyalty. I don't see that in this country as much, but personal loyalty sometimes, what's another word? Overwhelmed. I was going to say trumps. I'm not sure we should use that word these days. Too politically loaded. But that loyalty is more important than piety. And it's not. It's not. The Prabhupada says a good king, even if his son does something wrong, he'll punish him or correct him. And if his enemy does something right, he'll reward him. Prabhupada gives that example. So sometimes we make the mistake that somebody's my friend, so we should be compassionate and merciful and kind to our friends and try to help them overcome whatever problems are. But not that because you're my friend, I overlook everything you do, whatever nonsense that you do. That's not right. We're devotees. We're supposed to be acting in a proper way. And then Prabhupada goes on to purport, and he describes that in this world, there's two kinds of activities, pious and impious. One leads to happiness, one leads to distress. And it's such a common question that people ask, why is there suffering in the world? And in a way that should try to show compassion, we're understanding philosophically that I'm suffering due to my past activities. It's described many places. My body is basically the representation of my past activities. I got this type of body, some maybe good karma, some bad karma, because of what my activities were. And because of that, there's going to be some happiness. Raise your hand if you get some happiness sometimes. And if you ever get some happiness sometimes. Raise your hand if you ever get some distress sometimes. Raise your hand if you want the distress. We don't want it, but it comes, isn't it? And Prabhupada mentions there's at least one or two purports where he says, the same way distress comes even though we don't want it, happiness comes also without an effort, a separate endeavor. You know, some days you just wake up, you just feel good. Other days you wake up, you don't feel very good. Other days you wake up and you know, it's rainy outside and you feel very upbeat. And other days it's sunny outside and you feel very down. This is just the nature of the modes of material nature. They affect us. But it's describing the devotees, they're not disturbed by that. We just understand it. It's just taken for granted. Just like, you know, young children, maybe I don't want to go to school today, but the parents don't know you need to go to school today. And the parent may be feeling, I don't want to go to work today. But I have to go to work today, right? It doesn't matter. And sometimes we've all experienced the day you don't want to go to work turns out to be the best day. And other days when you think it's going to be really good at work, it's the worst day. So what does that mean? It's like, it's described, Arjuna says, it's like trying to control our mind is like trying to control the wind. It's not possible. So trying to control the good and the bad of our past that comes, we can't control it. But at the same time, it's not that we don't try to do something. And that's a very nice example I heard years ago. That just like we don't have this problem here, we have different weather problems. But if say devotees in Florida, anybody in Florida, if there's a tornado or hurricane coming, you don't just ignore it. You don't just go on with life as if nothing's going to happen. But at the same time, you know, you don't just jump in your car and drive away. Maybe you need to do that at some point. But you stop and you board up the windows, right? You hear there's a tornado, there's a hurricane coming. You board up the windows. You go outside. You put all the lawn furniture inside. All the kids' toys are inside. You make sure everything's as safe as it possibly can be. Maybe in advance you buy a generator in case you lose power. You get the family into the safest room in the house, or if they tell you evacuate, you do that. Because we know sometimes people don't evacuate and then they pay the price for that. You do everything possible in a reasonable amount and you pray to Krishna and see what happens. And even amongst devotees, we know sometimes crises they hit. Recently, there was a big fire in Sharanagati in Vancouver. A lot of devotees lost their houses, you know. And other times that you might have seen, is it Kamalini Mataji, Apurva's wife? It was online. She was driving a car someplace when there's just a couple weeks ago, big storms. And I don't know how it happened, but somehow they always say, don't drive through the water. I think she drove through the water thinking it's a shallow pond. It wasn't a shallow pond. And it rushed away and she was completely immersed. Again, I only saw online, so I didn't know the details. But I think she actually literally had to like get out the window, which they say, you're panicking. How do you do that? Because the door doesn't want to open, the water's gushing. Somehow she escaped. She swam to the shore. Her car was ruined, which means she was this close to drowning and being killed. And she's a Prabhupada disciple, been a devotee for 50 years and distributes a ton of books. Even she had to face that great difficulty. And she survived. Devotees don't always survive those situations. Sometimes Krishna's plan. So what's the message? The message is we have a limited amount of time, which is every moment's a gift from Krishna. And we should use it very carefully. And whatever difficulties come, do the minimum we have to do. It's cold out, you put a jacket on. It's not like, okay, it's cold out, it's up to Krishna, I'm not going to put a coat on. Or it's cold out, it's raining today, I'm not going to get an umbrella. I'm going to leave it up to Krishna to keep me dry. It's probably would quote, God helps those that help themselves. He would quote that, and he even writes in the Bhagavad Gita, God helps. So we do what's important. We don't get carried away. We understand that our range of influence is limited. I was thinking it's just like a ship. If there's a ship, if you're a captain of the ship, you have to get from this point to that point. There may be storms, there may be winds, they blow you off course, you're 20 miles away from which you just get back on course and you keep going. You don't get disturbed by that. And you keep in mind what the real goal is. And I was thinking that maybe some of the ladies may have an advantage of this. I remember reading someplace they were talking about comparing the mentality of little boys and little girls. They were saying like when boys are playing a game and whatever it is, so many different types of ball games, and the ball falls on the line, whether it's in or foul, the boys or the young men, they'll have an argument. Wait, it was inside. No, wasn't, was out. No, wasn't, was in. I'm not going to play. I'm going to take my ball away if you don't let me, blah, 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 right? Everything, the whole thing falls apart. And they were saying in this book, I don't have a girl's body. They didn't grow up in a girl's body. Didn't have any sisters close in age, but they were saying girls, they'll stop, they'll sit down, they sit in a circle, hold hands and say, we need to work this out in our relationship. In one sense, because they know what the goal is. The goal is we're friends and we're having a good time together. The guys are like, get completely absorbed in the game, right? Which is temporary. What really matters is you're going to be in that same neighborhood, the same street with those people, those other kids for the next 10 years. And, arguing over this is not worth your long-term relationship. So in that sense, we have to keep our eye on the goal. What's the goal? The goal is to become Krishna conscious. The goal is to realize I'm not the body, I'm spirit soul, I have a relationship with Krishna. And to take full advantage of the opportunity that's been given me. If we have that, then we won't be disturbed. And I was noticing, I was reading through a few other verses. I'm not sure if it's in the verse or maybe in the purport. It's very sweet. Prabhupada mentioned it, something that uses this. I'm not sure it's the exact words, but very close. He says, Krishna's main duty is to protect his devotees. I was saying, wow, that's really amazing. That's like his duty. This is like his main job. I was thinking like, oh, well, that means he's taking care of me too. And we should all feel like that, It's like, he actually considers this his duty, just like he's described. If someone says once, Krishna, Krishna, he thinks, oh, this person's called my name. I have to take care of them. Right? Now, if you're a teacher in the school, if you have a submissive student or a good student, it doesn't mean all of a sudden you tell them, okay, go back in the room and you don't have to study this year. Right? You say that if you're a good teacher? Do your teachers tell you that? If you're a good student, they maybe even push you a little more, isn't it? Right? And you're thinking like, wait a minute, I'm a good student. Why are you pushing me? Well, they want you to reach your full potential. Right? I remember one year in elementary school going to two different teachers, and one of them, the first day of class, she was really nice. And you used to tell this is going to be like a fun class. And she was very friendly. And I was thinking, wow, I'm going to like this class. I remember there was another teacher who was like, these are the rules. This is what you're going to do. And I thought, oh boy, this is going to be a tough class. But I remember a few months later questioning how it worked. Actually, the strict teacher, that was a much better class. The more lenient teacher, things just kind of unraveled over time. She wasn't pushing us to come to our full potential. So in the same way, Krishna protecting us means he's going to push us to our full potential. I mean, and you look at the great examples of Pandavas. Wow, did they face some tests? Because he wanted them to be an example for us. And we also were meant to be examples for others. So sometimes we get pushed a little bit, but we should take shelter of Krishna. It's his final instruction in the Gita. And in that purport, I think it's in 1866, Prabhupada says, don't worry, don't hesitate. So we all worry and we all hesitate. Krishna, are you really there? Should I, like they have this expression, cover my bases, right? I'll get a little something here, but I'll give a little something over there. I'll do a little something here. I'll do a little something there, which is okay. But gradually, we're meant to understand that he's actually our best friend. And if we take shelter of him, that actually he'll protect us. As we see with Dhruva Maharaj, he faced a lot of obstacles. He was abused as a child, 5 years old. His father ignored him and allowed his stepmother to verbally abuse him to the point that he ran out of the house and eventually ran away from home. He was an unhappy boy. It's not like there wasn't child abuse in the past. He turned that all around, took shelter of Krishna, became a devotee, a great devotee. He's in the Bhagavatam. He's one of the Mahabhagavats. So we can follow his example, and whatever obstacles we face, know that Krishna's there and he's going to help us. So we'll stop. There's a couple minutes. If there's any questions anyone would like to ask or comments. There's a whole bunch of you out there, so I'm sure some of you have something to say.
Thank you so much for
Besides
bringing
the
the topic of cleanliness, and oftentimes the common answer to myself is don't have time.
Can I interrupt?
Yes,
Can I interrupt? Then we should ask, did I have time to eat? Did I have time to brush my teeth? Did I have time to shave your head? Right? I'm not saying you for all of us. So we should think like that. I mean, we don't have time. We can do a little, I don't have time to smile at this new person in the temple. If I don't have time, they don't have time, she doesn't have time, he doesn't have time, are they going to stay? Everybody ignores them. They're not going to come. I'm telling Krishna, dear, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh my Lord, engage in your service, engage in your service, engage in your service. Here's a little service. I don't have time. 2 hours a day, I have time to ask Krishna to give me service, and when he gives me 1 minute of service, I don't have time. Isn't it? So we should think. So where's that coming from? That's my materialistic mind. That's my materialistic mind. We have to be careful for that. And again, it's not that I remember personally when I had an office at the DC temple for a while before they knocked it down, built the beautiful new temple. I can remember literally thinking I have to put like a horse blinders on my eyes because it's the end of the day. I have to go home. I can't do anything else. And if there's this, that needs to be fixed, I don't have time to fix it. I can't fix it. I'll do more tomorrow, but I'm done. Once in a while, we may be at that point, but generally on the way to the car, simple example, we can do something. When we come to the temple, we can do something. I was at a temple not too long ago. I was really shocked. I was looking at the post. I checked yours here. We're kind of okay from that sense. They had posters up. I was there in October. They had posters up for Gaur Purnima from the year before. Up for public displays. Like what? Does anybody, right? Home again and me and this, so like my spiritual master opened my eyes, but apparently nobody in that whole community had their eyes open. How do you have a poster on a wall that's 6 months old? And people come to the temple and they notice those things. Oh, there's a festival coming up. Oh, it was 6 months ago. Well, that's weird, isn't it? So these, we have to notice these kind of things. It's really important. And you're right, we have limited time, but we all have a little bit of time. And on top of that, we all know that if we pray to Krishna, we may think I don't have much time, okay? But if you take the extra minute, you pray to Krishna, you'll get through the green light. He'll send a green line instead. You may be thinking, I don't have time for this service, and then there'll be so many obstacles will take your time away. The same time you could have used for him. And if we use a little bit of time for him, then other things will happen. We see that all the time. I have no time to do this. Okay, I'll do this for Krishna, and he'll send so much help for other things we have. I'll do a little something else for Krishna, and then, you get to work. It's like, hey, I took care of that project you were supposed to do. I had a little extra time. You're like, wow, you just saved me 2 hours. Krishna, Krishna. Is that okay?
Thank you.
Anything with the ladies' side? One thing I noticed here, just would encourage everybody. Part of my job now, I was saying yesterday, we shouldn't be critical. I'm GBC, I get to walk around the country and criticize. Right? But one thing I noticed here, the deities are so beautiful. There's no vases. I mean, some temples, they don't have Lakshmi, there's nobody in the, it's a very small temple, so they don't have vases. But vases, you can make a vase of vase, they say. 2 vases, it lasts for at least a week, sometimes 2 weeks. So, we should encourage devotees to come forward. It's a wonderful service. I know maybe some of the men aren't so artistic, some are, but there are a lot of places that the ladies that love to make their vases every week, And we should try to figure that out, because that's very standard in our Prabhupada, Nuga, Vaishnava, ISKCON temples. There's vases for the deities. And maybe somebody, I don't know, maybe the budget's really tight, but, some of us here, we can come forward and offer another, $100 a month and say, I want my donation, go to buy vases twice a month or something like that, flowers. Because again, that's Krishna, right? Don't we all like to have fresh flowers in our houses from time to time? I have orchids, I like my only have a few. I'm not a gardener, but I have orchids. I try to take nice, because you have flowers, it makes it nice. So of course, Krishna, this is prasadam garland, probably offered the deities, but also vases are very important. And not just on, holidays, but simple thing. We should try to figure that out. Okay. Yes, Prabhu. Yeah, I think the mic's off. And after this, yes, Prabhu.
Thank you for the nice class. Is it a good idea to keep idea box in temple, like devotee suggestion box?
Some places they do that. Remember, I tried that once in Washington, D.C., and it just collected dust. So my enthusiasm for suggestion boxes is not what it once was. But it can be a good idea. If somebody finds those suggestions and then responds to those suggestions. I think in one sense, as you're asking that question, I was thinking actually we should all be suggestion boxes, isn't it? We should be looking for what can I suggest to myself? And again, the tendency is, it's just the material consciousness. And material consciousness means it's all about me. Then to one extent or the other, everybody's meant to serve me. If we're more pious, we're thinking, the government's meant to serve me, my kids, my wife are meant to serve me. But if we're impious, we're meant to think the whole world's meant to, I'm going to conquer the world. And they're meant to, and we see that going on today, all over the world, people trying to conquer and kill and, horrible things, all coming from the material consciousness that my gratification is the most important. So this, in a much more intrusive way, violent way, sometimes we tend to think, she should fix this. He should fix that. How come he didn't fix that? They should, that's not me. But again, Prabhupada took out the trash. There's lots of Prabhupada standing in line waiting for the shower. We've all heard those stories. He could have told everybody, don't you know who I am? You're 18, I'm 70. I'm your guru. You maybe not accepted me fully yet, but I'm the teacher here. You're living in that front room. I'm the one that pays the rent. He would have a lot of arguments to give. but he stood in line. Because he saw that's kind of what was necessary to do because of the level of consciousness that's there. So we should be like that, walking suggestion boxes, suggesting, maybe I can do this for Krishna, maybe I can do that for Krishna. Oh, this is a good idea for Krishna. And of course, there's some specialization. You know, that has to be there, or else we don't get much done. But yeah, to answer your question, I mean, you'll go step down his back. Maybe suggestion box is a good idea. I think more important that we're open to suggestions and that we take them up. Okay.
The suggestion box.
Oh, we have one. There is one there. It's probably the same one I had in DC. It's collecting dust. I don't know. No, they're very good as long everybody knows they're there. There's paper, there's pencil, and we look through them once a week, and maybe even Sunday somebody suggested this, and we're going to try to do that. Of course, sometimes you get suggestions that aren't very practical. We had one of our meetings in Denver where I was years ago. We had a meeting with our congregational leaders, and one man said, you know, we really need to make the Sunday feast more attractive. And if we served pan, so many people would come. Pan, you know, like it's right, the leaf, right? I was like, well, thank you very much. That's exactly the kind of suggestion we want, because we're trying to ask all of you for good ideas how we can make our temple more approachable. At the same time, we have our instructions from Srila Prabhupada, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, like that. So that wasn't such a good suggestion, but still it doesn't mean the other ones were good. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. And I don't mean to pick, please forgive me. It's not like, well, don't ask Anuttama class again. He just talks about tomatoes outside. But it's a serious thing. You know, we are spreading the panacea. We're not the only ones doing good in the world. We shouldn't get arrogant or proud or closed-minded. But in our own humble ways, we're trying to share a panacea for a lot of the problems of the world. You could say all the problems of the world. And we have to really see how well are we representing that. And just like a child in the beginning of life, it's all take, like a baby, it's take. Get a little older, take. You know, this is my toy, right? And you're trying to teach your little kids about sharing, which sometimes is a very traumatic thing for them to learn about sharing. And then as you get older, and then we know when you get middle-aged or whatever, or maybe an adult, you realize how much we owe our parents. You know, when you're up at 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to take care of your baby who's cutting their teeth or whatever, and then you think, geez, did my mom and dad do this for me? Yeah. You know, when it's like a struggle sometimes to pay the bills, like, did my mom and dad worry about it? Yeah. You know, when you have to go to a PTA meeting and deal with it because one of your kids is making a problem in class, were my parents embarrassed by me the way sometimes I am by mine? Yeah. You know, we see how much they've given, and then it inspires us, and then I should try to give more. So in the same way, when, you know, I was a single when I first started reading this purport, you know, someday I'll mention my personal conviction. Someday somebody's going to do a PhD study on where was Prabhupada when he wrote this particular purport and what was happening. So reading this purport, I was thinking, so is Prabhupada maybe one of these few times he was in LA or Hawaii where he sat down and translated extensively. Most of his books is like, okay, this purport was maybe like, you know, 1 o'clock in the morning when Prabhupada was in Africa. I don't know, I'm just saying. Or it was 2 o'clock in the morning when Prabhupada was in Mumbai. Or something like, he wrote these purports in the middle of the night. And we kind of reread these books and we think, boy, they're beautiful. Managing the whole movement during the world, during the day. Dealing with so many guests, VIPs, devotees, writing thousands of letters. And at night, when we'd all be sleeping, he's writing these purports. I mean, for us, I mean, do we owe him something or what? You know? And again, if it means picking up some stuff in front of his temple, we should try to do that. Or whatever it means, we have our various sense. But we should feel that sense of appreciation and commitment and gratitude. And that should motivate us. Just the way we feel some gratitude to our parents, maybe go a little extra mile with your kids, because they did it for us. So the same way Prabhupada and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, you all the way back. We're Sometimes they say we're standing on the shoulders of giants. So we don't stand on their shoulders, we follow their feet. But we're following in their footsteps only by their compassion and mercy. And we're very fortunate to have their guidance and their shelter. So we'll stop there. Thank you very much, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Please, Anuttama Prabhu ji ki jai.